A regular meeting of the Board of Education for the Santa Fe Public Schools. First thing we will do is stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, followed by the acknowledgement of tribal land.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tesuque Pueblo people, and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together. Thank you very much. Please note Vice President Lorraine Price is excused. And we are moving on to the approval of the agenda. I'm guessing we don't have any, do we have any changes? We do. Dr. Garcia.
Yes, Madam President, I think in the interest of time, we decided that we will move restraint and seclusion to a future meeting.
Okay, item 10C, restraint and seclusion will be postponed to a future meeting. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam President, also if we can, sorry we got a little bit off the approval of the agenda. However, I would just like to see if we could have a moment of silence for, there's actually a student that passed away in, I believe, our district. And also for the two young gentlemen that actually were in a car accident down in the southern part of Santa Fe County who actually attend Moriarty High School. But if we can actually just have a little bit of moment of silence for the two different situations, accidents that happened.
Thank you, Secretary Garcia. We'll have a moment of silence then to think about a couple of unfortunate recent tragedies.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we send love and condolences to the families and friends of everybody affected. Okay, on to the introduction of the interpreter, Mr. Martinez.
Buenas tardes, Presidente Novo, miembros de la Junta Escolar y Superintendente, Doctora García. Mi nombre es Germán Martínez y serviré como intérprete. Si alguien necesita esos servicios, por favor, levante la mano. Good afternoon, Board President Noble, board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia. My name is Germán Martinez, and I'll serve as the interpreter. If anybody would like those services or needs those services, please raise your hand, and I'll provide those in the back of the room. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now on item 3, the School Board Showcase, and we are starting with El Camino Real. El Camino Real Academy piano students are here. April Pickrell is the music director, and we have them performing a few songs, and we have, maybe you can raise your hand, Marcos Aispuro, hello, Brenda Ferrer Hurtado, hello. Elena Chamberlain, hi, you go first, I'm guessing. And Antonio Leba, there we go. And, oh, under the direction of Casey Cruz, it does say that. somewhere else. Just got to that bullet point. And Casey Cruz, that's you. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And you're performing Faded, Alone, All of Me, and Rondo a la Turca. Is that right? All right. Welcome. That was fantastic. Thank you all very much for coming. Thanks to your families for being here.
Madam President, students, before you go, I was speaking to Ms. Noble. I was telling her I started taking piano. I'm not going to tell you how old, but really old. And it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it's really very stressful to perform in front of people, even performing in front of your piano teacher. And you guys did amazing. So you should really, really be proud of yourselves. Let's give them another big round of applause.
Well done. Thank you all for whatever nerves you had to conquer to do that for us. We appreciate it. Okay, now we have Chaparral Elementary School and something very close to my heart, a Culture of Kindness presentation. Erica Martinez Maestas is the principal. Is she here? Hi, there you are. And Victoria Rael is the teacher. Hello, welcome. Megan McGinnis, parent.
McLean, I'm
Ah.
sorry, I got it wrong.
Okay. And Destiny McKenna Romero. All right, welcome. Ms. Martinez Maestas.
Good evening, Board President Noble, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, and members of the leadership team. It is my extreme honor to present to you the work that we are doing at Chaparral this year. This is my first year as principal and my first year at Chaparral. I have the added honor of being a member of that neighborhood. So my stepkids have gone there. We live just across the street from Chaparral. This year has been a year of much learning and growth, and I certainly feel blessed to serve this community. So we're going to talk a little bit about our journey. I don't know if I should click. Okay. So when I started at Chaparral I came on last summer, and I started with getting to know the community. And there's two things that kept coming up. That was kindness and a tone of decency. And that was from staff, families, and so that really touched my heart and pushed me forward. When I started, I shared my story, and there's a little pocket chart that I keep up in my office of my journey. And in my journey, I learned some really important lessons about perseverance, finding my niche, being humble, integrity, the power of listening, through all the schools that I've had the honor of working with. So we started the year off with just bringing our teachers in and showing a great deal of appreciation. Community members donated bags, and we just honored every staff member. Everyone's a teacher in our school, from custodians to cafeteria. It doesn't matter. You're a teacher in our school. We then brought in community members before the school year started, and this was really a beautiful sight. People that didn't know each other came and served in our school. They helped set up bulletin boards. They made folders. It was an awesome day of service. And we know a culture of kindness begins with the adults in our buildings. And I have a keen awareness that I need everyone on my team. I needed to create that team, and one of the things that I say repeatedly is that we have this great opportunity to create the culture we want, and we know how we want our hallways to feel and our classrooms to feel. So I've led with that, and I'm in classrooms regularly. I would say a minimum of every other week. I give feedback every single time. It's, I think, always written. So I've just put one note. When we came back from break, I thought I could send an email, and then really what I wanted to do was write a note to my staff. And I think that's a little bit more personal, and it's my work. It's not typed up. Something that was shared by a teacher with me in the fall was that the halls were brighter. And she said, "I know the lighting hasn't changed." And that was huge. Another thing shared by a teacher was the time before break and at the end of the semester is nutty. We all know that. Despite that, you undertook making your staff feel appreciated and valued in a big way. So that was in reference to, we all have to think of some type of gift to give our staff before break. And I thought lotion, whatever, gift cards, whatever. Instead, my family and I just served our staff. So we had coffee one day, we had lunch one day, things like that week before break. And just that attitude of service. And now I'm going to let Victoria share a little bit from a teacher perspective.
So the nice thing about this school year and having Erica as our leader is, first of all, she really listens to her staff. She allows us to offer suggestions. Her t-shirt is one of them that came. We started the year with the t-shirts that said, "Dude, be kind." We just wanted to start our year off that way. But I spoke to a few of my colleagues and asked how they felt, and here's the positive that they've felt this year is we've built a lot of relationships among our staff, our students, and with our leader, Erica. Erica treats us like professionals. We have the encouraging walkthroughs. We feel trusted. which is huge for our school. We have a lot of new professional development at our school, which is encouraging and helps and is all built on kindness also. But I wanted to share a little experience from this year that I would never have done in the past. And so I had my formal walkthrough, or my formal observation last week. Yes. Yeah. And I would never have attempted to try something completely new in my classroom before. And just having Erica as the leader, I let her know I'm going to try something completely different. I've never tried this before. But I really want your feedback, and I want to know, like, am I rushing through this? And she was very kind and, offered some suggestions on how I can improve, but also let me know what I was doing well.
And I shared the same thing, actually, with a colleague that I was surprised Victoria had tried a new strategy, and rocked it, of course. I wasn't surprised, but those are some of the things, those building relationships, the building trust, begins with our adults in the building. Now we'll go to our students. In that green and red chart there, we chart the number of office visits. So the red is when students make bad choices, and the green is for good office visits. If you'll notice at the end, there's November and December. We went from 30 office visits the previous month to like 20 in November and December combined. But our positive calls kept going. So I asked staff members to give me the names of 2 kids every month, and I invite them down to my office, and they call home, and they tell their families the good things that they're doing. And it's amazing. It's huge. It's so much fun for me, but it's huge for the kids and the families. So one of the biggest surprises for me coming to Chaparral is that it's a really high-need community. We have a lot of families in transition. We have much more poverty than I expected, many more grandparents raising students than I expected. We live in that neighborhood, so I was just looking at my street, and our student body doesn't only look like my street. So some of the things we've done with our kids is we have a daily kindness challenge. Every day it might be to help a classmate, it might be to write a note to a teacher. We recognize those kids who are being kind, so that's my office door, and they come up after they've been recognized. They add a snowflake, because it's winter, of course. When kids do come to my office for making a poor choice, one of the key things that I always tell them is that I love them enough to not let that be a crutch, their issues or their poor choice or their bad morning. And I regularly tell kids that I love them. I want them to feel that way in our school. Down at the bottom, we did something I think that my staff thought I was crazy at first, but we gave every student a book before break, but we all wrote in them. So I wrote in every single one, and then I asked our staff to write in 8. And every kiddo got a personal book. I want them to know that we love them, that we care about them, and they're valued. So now one of our kiddos, Destiny, is going to share a student perspective.
Hello, my name is Destiny McKenna Romero, and I am here. I am a 6th grader at Chaparral, and this is my 7th year there. I am here to speak about kindness at our school. We have kindness. At our school, we have a kindness challenge. Every day pick up trash on the playground or say good morning to 3 people. I see a lot of kindness around our school. 2nd graders picking up trash, a 6th grader holding a door, 1st graders giving hugs, and students writing nice, kind notes. I feel like the kindness challenge is really working at our school. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Destiny.
Thank you, Destiny. I should share, she watered my plants today. They wouldn't be alive without Destiny. So of course, we can't have a culture of kindness without our families. And there's a couple things we've done this year. We had a Meet the Teacher event instead of open house. We had a pet parade watch party. Rather than walking in the pet parade, our families gathered and we watched it together. It was super fun. We had a math night. I'm told we had great attendance based on previous years. I call families for kids who turn in their home folder with all the notes and everything. So I call 14 families every month just to thank them for being involved, because returning that homework folder is a big deal. And I want families to feel valued. Coming up, we're going to have this Friday, we're going to go watch the Demons play as a school. We've arranged that with Mr. Morano. We're going to have a bingo for books. We want to keep our families engaged and increase that engagement. Chaparral used to be a school that had very, very high family engagement, and we need to build that back up. And now Megan McLean, who has been a parent at our school for quite some time, is going to share her experience.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Megan McLean, and I have 4 kids that have all been at Chaparral. 2 have gone on to graduate, and I've been there 9 years now. I also live in the neighborhood. I thought it was really important to be part of the neighborhood community school, and that's been wonderful for us. When we first came to Chaparral, we were told how we just missed out on this amazing tenure of a principal that was there for 21 years and had been amazing for the school, and how there was such a huge community at the school. Unfortunately, after that, it went through a long period of just lots of different principals that we went through. And I think it's true what Principal Maestas is saying, is that we're really getting back to what Chaparral used to be in a real community school. And it seems like the parents and the students and the teachers all are really happy this year and feel like they can speak openly to Principal Maestas. I know from my own experience that my kids are just so much happier than they have been the last several years. There's just a culture of calmness and kindness and caring there. And the phone calls she talked about, both of my boys got calls this year, and it was new to me. And I remember being on a work trip down in Carlsbad, and I got a call, and it was from the principal. And my first thought was, oh no, what's this going to be? Because my boys are a little rambunctious, good kids, but I've had calls in the past that haven't always been the greatest, and it was just, I can't tell you how great it made me feel to talk to them. And she has them tell you personally on the phone how they're doing in school, and it was a wonderful experience. And then recently she did a program over the Christmas break where the kids, if they read 15 books or 15 chapters over the break, they would get to have hot chocolate with her. So we got a call about that too, and that was great for my youngest son. And just to wrap up, I just want to say that I think to have a kindness be the main goal of an elementary school is exactly, from a parent's perspective, exactly what you want for an elementary school. And that's all I care about. So I'm really happy about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I had to coax one of her boys to call. He's in 6th grade. He's like, do I have to talk? I'm like, you have to talk. And then he was so happy. So here's a little bit of feedback from some of our stakeholders, our teachers, parents. We had Dr. Gaddy Carson come and do some PD at our school. And she shared, I found a school where people genuinely care about each other, talk to students, greet parents in the drop-off and pickup line, and extend the extra effort to make your school a safe, happy place to learn. She hadn't been in our building for quite some time. She didn't know about our kindness challenge. So our next steps, we really want to work on holding our students accountable for their learning, for their engagement in their learning, and I know that that's done by having relationships with students. So our staff has committed to really being intentional about having 3 conferences with every student, student-teacher conferences before spring break. That's manageable. That's a 3 to 5 minute conference where they really sit down and get to know that kiddo in front of them. We'll continue with achievement celebrations. I go into the classroom and recognize any students that have shown growth on reading and math assessments. We'll have our school-wide traditional celebration for achievement coming up here. And with our staff, you know, we've been talking about what are our values as individuals, and are we showing those values, and are we staying true to them? So most of our staff have put their values up on the wall, and just to show the whole community, and I've shared with them my personal 2 words for this year. My personal value is integrity, and for me that's doing what's right when nobody's watching. But my goal and my word for this year is balance, which I think we all can work on. So I have one more, I think. This is outside of one of our first grade rooms. So it says, what should I do when I have a conference with my teacher? What is my pledge? So our little guys are committing to what they're going to do in this upcoming year. And that is what we have, Chaparral, home of the Firebirds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really inspiring, and thank you for everybody who came. It really is something that the school board has wanted to invest in as a means of, I think it sounds like you all understand it, but healthy happiness, health, happiness, and preventing bullying and keeping schools safe. A lot of us believe really begins with a culture of kindness, and this is truly inspirational. So thank you very much for your work and all that you're doing. Secretary Garcia.
Just really quick, great job, Mrs. Erica, to yourself and your staff, obviously. Some of the things that pointed out to me were actually over the break reading. I actually think that's very great, because sometimes for summer break it seems like we see the students actually take off for their summer break, and we don't see them till the following year. But I think over the break reading is great. Some of the things that parents realize is the drop-off line. Probably one of the most important parts. All the parts of the school are important, but that when you drop off your kid in that morning and the teachers are out there greeting you and they all know the kids for first name. Some of the schools is hard because there's a lot more population than some of the other schools, but I think that's a great job. Encouraging family engagement, because that's really, really important in this community. And sometimes I understand it's really, really hard because, there's some families out there that, they may work 2 or 3 jobs, but trying to encourage family engagement in the community or in any school is very, very important. And thank you for encouraging that. Miss Density, that's you. Actually, Destiny, sorry. Very good job up there. You did a good job, and also I like your sweater that actually matches what your topic of the night was. But thank you all.
Thanks very much for coming. Okay, moving on to public forum. I'm guessing nobody's signed up, but maybe somebody signed up.
President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, no one has signed up for public speaking.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Any last minute requests to address the board in public forum? Okay. The union update will not take place tonight. Grace Mayer, the president of NEA Santa Fe, I think is unable to make it tonight, so we will see her in about 2 weeks. Board announcements and follow-up. Does anybody have anything they want to say? I will talk a little bit about our Board of Education retreat that took place this past Saturday, which was whatever date it was, January 18th. There we go. We did a few things. We updated governance board norms, including basically that we don't respond during public forum, and a few other things. And I will pass out copies of the updated governance board norms for all of us to keep, and maybe we leave one for Vice President Price here. We looked at updating our agendas, at keeping presentation times as close as possible to 10 minutes. Of course, it's difficult to control sometimes the board questions and comments, so we will do our best as well. We also talked about placing a standing item at the end of each board agenda, looking at how we did according to our board norms. Personally, I am also into the other one that's listed here, which is what did we do for the kids of the Santa Fe Public Schools today, just to create a little bit of self-reflection in an ongoing way. We also agreed that study sessions will move from Tuesdays to Thursdays in the same week that they are scheduled currently. So in terms of next week, we'll be looking at a study session on Thursday rather than Tuesday, if we do in fact need that when we get there to advanced planning. And we will also be doing study sessions starting at 4 p.m. Rather than 6 p.m. And hopefully that'll be a little bit easier on some of the staff who help us through the study sessions. Our next study session is tentatively scheduled for February 13th. So we will take action on moving the study session dates and times when we get to advanced planning tonight. We also talked about the superintendent's evaluation process and moving to a quarterly meeting with the superintendent to provide feedback and update expectations and goals, especially based on the workload that the superintendent has with the district, because something always comes up. And the board will work to get back on schedule, or more regular schedule, for the superintendent's evaluation following the state's schedule as guided by the Public Education Department for evaluation and contract renewal. Also, as we're looking at a new schedule after the local election consolidations have happened, which began this year, and school board members took office on January 1, we're going to try and be more intentional about including priorities for the board in the budget development process earlier in the building process. And in looking at the reinvention and reimagining resolution, we talked about including student voices and student leadership in the reinvention framework. Anything I missed or anybody wants to say about other things we talked about in the retreat? Good, happy? Okay, I think that's all we have in terms of board announcements and follow-up. So thank you very much. Moving on to superintendent announcements and follow-up. Dr. Garcia. Yep, Secretary Garcia.
Madam President, I would just like to, everybody knows that the state legislative session actually started today. And hearing the governor's state of the state and her priorities, as well as the state legislature, the governor actually started off with education, education, education. Pre-K education and how they're going to fund this year's education fund through the Public Education Department, as well as to the entire state. Obviously, thanks to the assistance of the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit. And it's going to be very great fun for us to figure out how we're going to start our new pre-K and how we're going to do that, when we're going to do that. And I think the next item on the superintendent's list of the update resolution, enhancing equity and excellence. We actually did talk about that at the retreat, and the superintendent will probably touch a little bit more based on that. But it was very interesting to see that the governor of state legislature actually is, their number one priority is actually education, education. So I'm excited to actually move forward on that and see what it entails and what we can do for our local district. Thank you.
And raises for teachers. We're gonna get more, which is great. We'll see what the legislature does with a couple different proposals, but it's really a wonderful thing to be in a not if but how much situation. Okay, superintendent announcements and follow-up. And Dr. Garcia, thank you for all the work you did for the retreat and supporting, and everybody else who worked to organize the food and room and supplies and legal advice and all of the above. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It takes a village. So I do thank my staff for helping keeping me on track. And it was a very productive retreat. I went home feeling very jazzed and excited about the work that we want to do together on behalf of the students, staff, and families that we serve. Just a very, very brief update. I continue to meet with various stakeholders, not to necessarily listen to solutions and ideas of how we're going to address this, but rather the process. Now, people can't help themselves. People give you their opinions and their ideas, and that's helpful too, because it says, oh, well, we need that bucket of work. You know, maybe it's something that I haven't thought about. One of the largest, not largest, but one I think that's significant group that I met with last week with staff was with the mayor's office. We met with the mayor and Dr. Gonzalez in her capacity as the mayor's education policy advisor attended, and we had, I think, a very good dialogue about the framework. But what also came out of that was a desire for a staff-to-staff quarterly meetings where they found a lot of synergy, right, on issues that they're both working on. But the city obviously will definitely be included. I'm going to follow up with the help of Commissioner, we're wearing his commissioner hat, Garcia, to also meet with county staff. And there's lots of meetings still scheduled, and I appear to be on track to bring the framework to you for your consideration on the 18th of February. With us this evening is our lobbyist to the legislature, Linda Siegel, who has tremendous amount of experience, and we're so lucky that she is our lobbyist. And she has a few handouts and a brief overview of this legislative session. Yeah, actually, Debbie could help you, Israel.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia and Madam President, board members. I'd like to welcome your two new board members. Sarah, you're actually my school board representative, so thank you, and I've worked with Carmen for many years. So I just want to give you a very brief overview of the legislature and what's happening. As Secretary Garcia said, today was the first day of the legislative session. It began at noon, and the governor did her State of the State speech at about 1:45 or so. Now we know that there's about 800 million, million new money, $797 million of new money. Most of that, about half of it, is from the surge in oil and gas revenues and the gross receipts tax surge that comes from all the equipment and supplies that are purchased. So the southeastern part of the state is generating a very large percentage of our state budget and the new money that will be available. As usual, in a 30-day session, this is just about budget. So the only pieces of substantive legislation that can be introduced in a 30-day session are those that the governor wants. And the governor actually has about 24 items that she wants to see discussed, and many of them are money. But she gets to decide what are going to be the statutory changes that may be made during the session. And so far, she hasn't issued too many messages on bills that have already been introduced by legislators. We now have this system that allows for pre-filing. This is fairly new, about 4 or 5 years old, where before the session even starts, people can go in the summer and get all their bills drafted and then file them up until a few days before the session starts. And there are about 300 bills, actually around 350, that have already been introduced and pre-filed. And a large percentage of those are not money bills. So they're statutory bills that legislators are perhaps hoping to get a message on. And as always, we are the last state, I believe, that does their budget this way. We have two budgets. The governor, through DFA, does one budget, and the legislature, through Legislative Finance Committee, does their budget. And when the session starts, except in a 30-day session, we start early, the House Appropriations Committee starts to meet, and they go through department by department. And they hear the presentation by the LFC analysts, and they hear the presentation by the department secretary and some of their staff. And then they decide which one of the two competing budgets, and they're often competing, they're going to pick to put into House Bill 2, which is the big budget bill. Of course, that's not the end of it, because there's still an opportunity to get more money into House Bill 2. But amazingly enough, in this legislative session, where everyone's trying to work together, the governor's trying to work together, the LFC and the governor's budget are very close. The governor is proposing that we spend $7.7 billion, which is about an 8.4% increase over our last fiscal year budget. And the LFC is proposing that we spend $7.5 billion, which is about a 6.5% increase. So they're very close.
7.5 million.
Billion.
I mean, billion?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a 7.5 billion, yes. So the major differences are in the 35 million that she would like for the college opportunity grant. The LFC doesn't quite see it that way. The governor wants to expand child care by 26 million. The legislature proposes 1 million. The governor, as has been said, proposed 4% increase for teacher salary, LFC 3%. So there are some significant differences, but all in all, it looks very good that they are going to come to a good consensus that's going to get us much of what they want. Now, the governor's proposing that 47% of all the new money go to education, in public education and higher education. Now, the chart I gave you, if you can read it with your reading glasses and a magnifying glass, I give you this because it's very interesting. This is the public education budget with the existing operating budget in the left column, the PED request in the middle column, and the LFC request on the right side. But what's very interesting is the state equalization guarantee, which is about 2/3 of the way down. When you look at those numbers, they're almost identical. So there's a lot of consensus there. And then where you start to have some differences are in the categorical appropriations. Yeah, so you can look at this and see where, yes.
Just real quick, just curious, because I know in some years the agency requests wind up more or less than what the governor's request was, the executive request. Was there a difference this year?
In the PED request?
Versus the governor's?
It's very small. If you look at the bottom line on the second page, where you have the grand total, it's almost identical.
So which is the GOVs, the FY20 operating budget?
The GOVs is so the operating budget is what you're working with now. The PED request, the governor's request, is in the middle.
So they're the same this year?
They're very, very close.
Okay.
SEG is very close, almost identical, and the categories, there might be some difference in them in the categorical, but but the total numbers
So
for
this
education.
is PED request, not Gov's request.
Well, PED is the gov.
Well, I know, but remember
Yeah.
before they used to be different?
Right, but now they're not different.
Okay, gotcha.
The governor would not really let the PED do a request that she didn't approve of. So
Madam
that's,
President,
Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
Linda, I know that the LESC recommended 6% increase, so what does that mean? You said 3% and 4%?
the governor's budget is 4%, the LFC is 3%.
So LESC.
Salary increase.
LESC doesn't really,
You know the tension between the
Yeah.
LESC and the LFC, and that continues.
and then Brian Egoff asked for 10%.
10%, yes.
So-
You don't see Brian Egoff's budget here anywhere. So,
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, what we do,
Secretary Garcia?
I'll wait till you're finished.
I think that's, and I did want to point out, in one of our last board meetings, you all had mentioned that you were concerned about tobacco consumption on campuses, and the governor, on her call, has a tobacco licensing and e-cigarette sales piece of legislation. So she heard all of us and is trying to address it. Some of the other on-call issue on her call, of course, are the cannabis, legalization of cannabis. I don't like to call it recreational because, I mean, do we call it recreational liquor? I don't know. It's just
And
what it
on
is.
the vaping, it's to make vaping the age 21 of tobacco and vape products,
yes,
right?
and the
Yeah, to
feds have
raise it.
already done that. The FDA has already done that, and it's not codified in this piece of legislation, but there's another piece of legislation that does the 21 for New Mexico in case they try to change it. Of course, you all know about the Early Childhood Trust Fund. The governor wants to put $320 million this session into a trust fund that would then spin off somewhere in the 30 million, starting out with 30 million range. And the Senate Joint Resolution 1, which is the Land Grant Permanent Fund, where they would take 1% out of that, is also a bill that will probably not pass, as it has not passed for many years now. But the Early Childhood Fund is likely to pass because there's broad support, and even Senator John Arthur Smith, the chair of Senate Finance, is the co-sponsor of that bill. So we all feel confident that that bill is going to pass and that we'll have a separate fund for early childhood education. So in there, if there's questions.
You ready now, Secretary Garcia?
Just really quick, Linda, thank you for your presentation. I guess the question in regards to is the money with the new surge of new money that's out there due to oil and gas, which is actually the second largest basin in the world that we're pulling oil out of. And so if the legislature actually gives money to the school districts throughout the state, and then the surge of new money does not happen anymore in the next 2 or 3 years, what is it going to be up to the school districts to continue this money that was funded to, let's just say, Santa Fe Public Schools, and all of a sudden the oil and gas is not there anymore?
Madam President, Dr. Garcia, Secretary Garcia, that is why that both the governor and the legislature have pretty much agreed to put 25% in reserves, which is almost $2 billion. I've been doing this a long time, and we have never had, it was a good year if we had 10% in our reserves. So 25% in the reserves is an incredible amount to help alleviate a bad year. And everyone, particularly on the legislative side, talks about the fact that we do have to be careful. We can't spend all this money, and we need to make sure that we're helping our people in New Mexico, but that we can't spend it all and then suffer what we've had to suffer when we had the recession in 2009.
Madam President? Or does somebody else have a question?
Then also, you talked about the state equalization guarantee, and now I see where it's roughly 3 million, 3.2 for public education request, 3.2 for LFC recommendation. But the right under that, it has actually a dollar change over prior year appropriations. And so it looks like this year was about 18%, and that now we're actually, PED is requesting only 5.5%, and LFC is at 5.4%. Why is there such a difference from the 18%? Do you know? Does anybody
Yes.
know?
Madam President, Dr. Garcia, Secretary Garcia, that is what the increase was last year. So the first column, don't worry about that, because that was last year. And so what's relevant is that really they're only 0.1% apart in what each of them are proposing for the SEG total.
Thank you.
Did you want to comment, Dr. Garcia?
I guess it's a comment and a question, because I know that the legislature, particularly Senate Finance, has talked about districts using reserves for recurring expenditures, right? 'Cause it's one-time money. I don't care if it's 25 million or whatever. I mean, whatever amount it is, right? Or 25% rather. So even though they do have it in reserve, it's non-recurring revenue. And so back to Secretary Garcia's question, the bulk of our budgets, I mean, it is salary, and that is recurring expenditure.
Right?
So I think we're still going to be in it would still be a problem. I mean, I think it's great to have the reserves, and it might help in some places, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not recurring, and that is still could still be an issue, I think.
And Madam President, Dr. Garcia, I think that's one of the reasons why there is so much emphasis on other economic development, so that we can diminish our dependency on extractive resources.
This may be a question for you, Dr. Garcia. Any sense as to whether we'll get a fix that will make it any easier? I know the NEA is big on this for the legislative session, but easier for retirees to come back into the schools. I don't know if that's a legislative fix or an administrative one.
Madam President, members of the board, I think it is a legislative fix, but the recommendation comes from the ERB board, and it's really hurt us this year, particularly around substitutes and whatnot. And also now they're looking at Howard, but on the return to work, they can, or if they're coming in, they can only work so many days per quarter, which I don't find how that helps the fund or makes any difference, but it's made them virtually unemployable. And so that has exacerbated the teacher shortage. And so it just seemed very tone deaf and out of sync. And I love my friends over at the ERB, but we need help.
Any chance that moves?
Madam President, there's been no legislation introduced, and I've heard no conversation about it.
Just moving on, my last questions, comments is regarding capital outlay for each individual schools. I'm interested in what requests are going to happen within my district, so just somebody working on that.
I think I'd have to defer to staff for the specifics.
And if you don't have the list now, if you can just somehow somebody get it to me before it's actually submitted.
We had to actually. May I, Madam President? We discussed that at our legislative breakfast, and what I understood from Ms. Siegel, right, was that we were looking at larger district-wide projects. That's what the legislature preferred to do, and so we can get you the list, but I don't believe there were any that were school site specific, right, Mr. Josh Granada?
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. Linda Siegel and I are actually working on submitting the capital outlay request. And as Dr. Garcia indicated, a lot of the requests were big district-wide projects, for example, a firewall to protect IT here in the district. Let's see, in terms of specific sites, Edmond, can you help me with this? So for Capitol High, there was the Capitol High turf replacement, and for Santa Fe High School, a softball field replacement. Those are the only specific site capital outlay requests. Otherwise, they're big district-wide projects.
Just really quick, thank you. In regards to the turf, is that for the football field?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else on this? Any final thoughts? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate having you, and thank you for doing such great work for the district so many, many times, so many sessions. We appreciate having you. Okay, moving on.
One more announcement.
And one more superintendent announcement. Dr. Garcia.
I mentioned to the board, Madam President, members of the board, that Santa Fe Public Schools was selected as a community of practice. Today we had a wonderful update to get people up to speed. We had several schools involved, looking at how we incorporate project-based learning, how it's tied to the standards, and how are there alternate ways of measuring those skills through project-based learning. And there's so much that is already going on in the district. We're so far ahead of the game. The state is looking at these projects as ways to demonstrate alternate demonstrations of competency when kids don't pass the SAT, but also having it be rigorous, that it is tied to the standards. And there's also a way to do that that can bring more cultural relevance. So for example, if you were building a hogan or building an horno, or how do you make adobe, you know, you can tie your culture and language, but also tie it to physics and science and any number of things. We have some pretty sophisticated projects that involve the creation of apps where the kids are actually tracking their own progress towards these standards, as well as digital portfolios. The sharing today, and I'm looking at the team over there, it was very rich. And we are going ahead of what the state is doing, just as we did with the attributes of the graduate. The state is now working on coming up with profiles of a graduate. We are trying to make that come to life, where we tie those to build them into these projects. This has the potential to really transform, we think, what happens in schools. When you hear the principals and the teachers talking about these projects, the excitement, what Gonzalez in one of the classes did around the Marvel heroes, I don't know if you're aware of that, where they tied Marvel heroes and tied it to the Revolution, American Revolution, or to genetics, you know, because what superheroes have genetic mutations, I guess, is the way the story line goes. But yeah, exactly. But to be able to tie it, you know, to science and any number of things, really fascinating and exciting. And that's what we want, right? For school to be relevant and exciting, and kids working with each other. And we went around the room and said, if you can think back about what you really enjoyed about being in school, it's probably a project where you worked with other kids on something, right? And what you created, and the excitement with your teacher. So. This is what the state has as a timeline, and we'll do a more in-depth presentation sometime at a study session, but I just wanted you to see the overview, the timeline that the state is wanting. There's 16 communities of practice that involve some charters and some districts. We in our district ourselves probably will have about eight schools that will be involved in this pilot. So just for your leisure, when you have time, take a look at this, and we'll present to you, and at another date, but this really, it will be an opportunity, I think, because, you know, just as the standardized assessment drove what happened in the classroom, assessment for learning will also drive, and I think transform, how we deliver a lot of our curriculum in our schools. And we probably really won't see deep down benefit from that, you know, systemically, probably for about 4 to 5 years, but we're really building a tremendous framework, and the practice is already happening, so it's very exciting, and I look forward to sharing that with you sometime.
And in short, this is very good news for us to be a community of practice.
To be have selected, yes, is very good news for Santa Fe.
It's a good icebreaker if you ever need one, or if we ever need one for a school board retreat, your favorite project or school project that you remember. I was just talking about when I dressed up as Winston Churchill one time. I know. It was wonderful listening to his speeches for that project. Anyway, thank you very much, Dr. Garcia. That's all your announcements? Yes, ma'am. Okay, on to the consent agenda. Any comments, questions, anything that any board member wants to remove and vote on separately on the consent agenda?
Madam President, I do.
Go ahead, Secretary Garcia.
Under item 8, section B. Let me get to that real quick.
Under the budget adjustment requests?
Yes. I just have a question for staff in regards to the spreadsheet, which is the first, second, third, the fourth, the fifth one down.
Sorry, you're talking about contracts over 50, not budget adjustment requests, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Madam President, the Capitol Highway?
yes.
All right, Ms. Wagner.
Which actually, first of all, I'd just like to thank staff whenever we have a change order in actually reducing the price in the architectural fees and or the entire project. That means we're actually doing some really great work out there at the site, when a lot of us don't realize the hard work that the project managers have to deal with, other than just watching the project get constructed, dealing with all the paperwork, purchase orders, contracts, so on and so forth. The Capitol High School, 2 change orders to reduce pricing of a total contract. Change order number 1 in the amount of $13,000 is to refund the district for design fees. Change order number 2 in the amount of $108,000 is for unused contingency on the project for a total of $2.5 million. What project is that at Capitol High?
Board President Noble, Board Secretary Garcia, Board Members Superintendent Garcia. This was Capitol High School Phase 2. So this was the science labs, the dance studio, and other general improvements. Typically, it does take quite a bit of time from closeout of a project to reconciliation. So as you can see, as Board Secretary Garcia pointed out, we're reconciling and returning monies to the general obligation bond as a result of that. So it's the Phase 2 portion of the project. The current open project there, just to refresh everyone's memory, is the turf field, the multi-purpose baseball, softball practice field. So that's still underway. It's a separate contract from this one. This was interior work that's been closed out.
Thank you, very good. And then also just really quick, pass by Capitol High School almost every single day, but what's the time frame for the baseball fields?
Board President Noble, Board Secretary Garcia, Board Members Superintendent Garcia, we anticipate substantial completion end of February, early part of March. The past week of weather has not been kind to us, so that's subject to change, but we are anticipating having our home opener on that field.
Great. And then also, if nobody has any questions, I'd just like to move for approval with for the consent agenda.
I'll second. I'd also like to point out we have a change order to return about $13,000 in unused contingency at Aspen Community School. So we have 2 projects where money is going back into the whole of the general obligation bond. And maybe at some point for all of us in the near future, it would be great to have an update on the general obligation bond and the project and the project allocations. I don't know if that's happened to the new board members yet, but I could use it too. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank
Madam
you.
President?
Yes.
Just
Dr.
want to
Garcia.
thank Deputy Superintendent Wagner and her Executive Director, Gabriel Mero, and the whole team of delivering projects on time with quality and then realizing savings. So congratulations. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a fun one to approve. We appreciate it. So we're moving on to the action items. Under action item 9, I'm a tiny bit torn as to doing this without Vice President Price here, though I think we do need at least immediately to place someone on the CRC. You didn't discuss this with her at all today, did you? The other thing I have, okay, and the other question was, I mean, we know and certainly can, based on what happened at the last board meeting, we need to take action to officially approve her CRC committee appointment that we discussed last meeting. But it does also feel a little perverse to do it without her here. So, although Dr. Garcia, is there somebody else that can speak to homework?
Yes, actually, it's going to be Ms. Sink.
Okay, Ms. Sink, will you talk to us about item C under action items? We are on the first reading and approval of policy 351, student homework. And this is just for anybody who's not following at home or for the thousands watching. We have moved to action item C as a point of privilege just because we're going to consult with Vice President Price, who is at home and not well on items A and B. Ms. Sink, welcome.
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. I am doing the first reading and approval for the policy 351 student homework. I will just summarize the policy. I assume you all have probably already read it. The board believes, as research supports, that student learning is positively affected when homework assignments are purposeful and engaging, as well as age and grade appropriate in quality and quantity. Homework assigned it will allow students to practice, reinforce, and deepen students' knowledge. A student should be able to complete it independently, and time spent on homework should be balanced with activities, interests, and family time. The AR that will be coming from this will basically reflect that homework is age and developmentally appropriate. And again, as we've worked on the AR in the past few weeks, we found lots of research and good practice across the country. It's been a fun kind of thing to do. And so I believe this is a really great way to look at homework finally.
I must say, reading this made my heart sing, so thank you very much. And perhaps when the AR is completed, assuming we pass this, we could even get an update on how homework works, because I hear a lot about that. I don't know about other board members, but it's something that people are fairly passionate about, and you know, it seems like little kids have a lot of homework.
And I missed a part of it. May I just say a couple of
By
things?
all means, yeah.
And I won't belabor. And if I'm repeating myself, just say, just real quick, that we recognize that elementary is probably overdone. It should be practice. It should be not learning new material. It should be age appropriate. And we recognize family home time should be a positive experience, right? The research shows that homework only makes a difference at secondary. It really does not make a difference at elementary or middle school. If anything, it makes things worse. And we also recognize that homework really shouldn't be created as such unless you're really doing a project or more at the secondary level. So it's, you know, I think people are just so caught up with homework. That's what we always do. And if they don't have lots of homework, you're a bad school district or whatnot. So we're going to try to strike a balance in the AR. I'd be happy to discuss it, obviously, but the board approves the policy. Okay, and I did get a hold of Ms. Price.
Thank you.
Secretary Garcia.
So has the district never had a policy on student homework? Or are we just amending this, or
It's
just?
a brand-new policy, Madam President.
And so it's actually an AR, for those of us that know what AR, administrative requirement. Is that an administrative requirement for the district, or is that actually for public education department?
There is no legislation or regulation on homework. We've been asked by our principals and teachers and some parents. There's been some controversy around homework, so we decided that we can create our own policy. The AR, the administrative regulation, will be written like we always do after the board passes the general policy.
So then this is basically the general policy, then the school district will actually create a lot more detailed homework policy? Or
Madam President? So you all approve the policy. Every policy that you pass, there is an accompanying administrative regulation that under my authority, we actually write the regulation. And policy typically is more philosophical and general unless you choose to want to have something more specific in it.
Thank you.
I will go ahead and move for approval on this. I appreciate the values that the new policy as written reflects around homework. So thank you for bringing this. Is there a second?
I second it.
Yes, there's a motion and a second. And just to clarify our policy, when we adopt new policies, our policy on policies, when we adopt new policies or amend policies, we do a first and second reading. So this is our first reading. I have come to appreciate the practice in that we do get another time to look at it and catch anything we didn't catch either the first or the second time. And so we'll see this again, but this is our first reading. Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, I know we skipped over those committee assignments, but could you just let us know when the committees meet? So
yeah, and we're going to go back to them. We were just seeing if Dr. Garcia could reach Vice President Price so that we could get her views, and she did reach her. So anyway, to complete action item 9C, the first reading of the student homework policy, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the first policy. The first reading has been approved. Now we'll go back to action item A. And Dr. Garcia, maybe you will let us know what you heard from Vice President Price.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I asked her two things. One, did she have a preference for serving on a committee? The only committee she has interest in serving is on the CRC. And then I asked her if it was all right if we went forward with action item 9B, and she was fine with that.
Okay, so on action item A for the audit committee, anyone interested in serving on that?
When does that meet?
Yes, to your question. Audit committee meetings are on Thursdays at lunch. So we have one next scheduled, I'm just looking at advanced planning, on February 13th. So that is the second Thursday. Mr. Martinez, that's the schedule. So it's the second Thursday monthly that the audit committee meets. The Partners in Education Board meets, is it the last or the fourth?
It's tomorrow,
Wednesday.
I think. Is it, let me check. It's either tomorrow or Thursday, and it is tomorrow, so.
It's the fourth Wednesday.
At noon.
Fourth Wednesday is the Partners in Education Board. And then the CRC meets, looks like the second Wednesday of the month. If
They
I'm
meet
not
in the evening.
in the evening.
Madam President, I could serve on those committees that meet at lunch, since I know that others are not retired like me.
Okay, yeah, and Board Member Bozay is not able to serve on lunch committees, so she seems a natural fit for the CRC, and I know is willing to serve there.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
And I am happy to continue on the Audit Committee. Are you, Secretary Garcia? Well, there's that, although I think Dr. Gonzalez would be absolutely perfect for the Partners in Education Board. So,
And we still have school
and we need
boards.
you to be on a committee. You don't get away from all of them. So I would propose 2. Okay, so I would suggest that Secretary Garcia and I continue on the Audit Committee, that the Citizens Review Committee be Board Member Bozay and Vice President Price, that we ask Dr. Gonzalez to serve on the Partners in Education Board, and that Secretary Garcia, I know, has interest in continuing on the School Boards Association Board of Directors. Now, Dr. Gonzalez, if you would like to serve on the Audit Committee as well, I think either of us would be happy to step off of that committee.
Madam President, I'm fine with however you want to do it. I mean, I can serve on it. The one thing, I am working in the legislature right now, and I'm not going to be able to make any meetings at noon this month, or for a month.
30 days. It's only 30 days. 29 now. Did you have something to add, or?
No, but you just need to make a motion. You can do them all at once.
No, we'll do them separately. Well, if you're willing, Dr. Gonzalez, I think it'd be great for you to serve on the Audit Committee. So you or me? You want me on? Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion that Dr. Gonzalez and I are the board's representatives on the Audit Committee. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There we have it. Somebody else want to make a motion on the CRC?
I move that Lorraine Price and Sarah Bozay serve on the CRC.
Okay, I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. And I would move that Dr. Carmen Gonzalez be our representative on the Partners in Education Board.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And I'll move that Secretary Garcia be the New Mexico School Boards Association Board of Directors at-large representative from this board.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have our new committee members. Next, we have action item B, board committee appointment to CRC by District 5 board member Lorraine Price. As we all heard at the last meeting, she has asked former board member Maureen Cashman to serve on the CRC. So I will move that we approve the appointment of Maureen Cashman to the CRC.
I second that.
Madam Chair, just for discussion, I actually think that board member Maureen Cashman is actually a good choice for that Citizens Review Committee. She has huge institutional knowledge on the committee. I sat with her on the committee for 12 so many years, but I think that's actually a great choice.
I'm guessing we don't need a roll call vote then, a roll call vote. Okay, we have a motion and a second for Maureen Cashman to be appointed officially to the Citizens Review Committee by District 5 Board Member Lorraine Price. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We already did action item C. Thank you very much. We are on to item 10 on the agenda, presentations. Dr. Garcia, we'll start with A, the Leadership Organizational Chart.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It's hard to see on a PowerPoint, so I would recommend that you look at your documents in your board book. So first of all is just a very general organizational chart. And under that, it tells you by what departments are under each. What I want to say, as you go through this presentation, we break down each department, and as you go through, you'll see more verbiage about what are the major functions within some of these departments and what they do. Obviously, departments that are smaller are able to fit in more verbiage, right? And so I'm going to do a very high-level overview. I want to thank Dr. Ryan and Mr. Exner and Mr. Bernardino for their help in constructing this. Our staff, all the department heads filled in the information. But if you go to the next page, it's a handy reference with pictures and people's names so that you can, especially for new board members, I think you'll find that helpful, right? So that's basically the cabinet there. And you can see that our Executive Director for Safety and Security, Mario Salvidres, the Chief Academic Strategist, Debbie Rael, Deputy CIO, Ruth Williams, our CIO, Dr. Tom Ryan, Chief Engagement Officer, David Carl, Linda Sink is our Deputy Superintendent. Just saying this out loud for people that are watching that can't read this. Deputy Superintendent for Operations and School Support, Christy Wagner, our CFO, Edmond Martinez, Executive Director for HR, Howard Exner, and our General Counsel, Josh Granada. We go to the next slide is Team Santa Fe. And Team Santa Fe, for the new board members, came out of our desire to have district top level supervised schools and to help keep them engaged in what's happening at the school level, but also better supervision. But we really want our principals to utilize these folks to help them manage the bureaucracy. I want our principals to be instructional leaders and not spinning their wheels because they didn't get an answer from Department X. This has been a challenge because they're so used to doing it themselves that they hesitate to ask for help. So we're constantly working on that. Their supervisors attend PLCs. This also is my school support cabinet. And so we basically have an instructional cabinet, and we meet every Monday, and we talk just about school, instruction, school improvement, teaching and learning. And then Ms. Sink has another meeting that she has with her staff. Everybody here meets with their own staffs, but we spend an extraordinary amount of time on school improvement. We used to just have like a combination of cabinet, and we would just deal with operations. And about 2 years ago, we decided we want to focus on instruction, and if we don't make it intentional, we're not going to talk about instruction and what's happening in our schools specifically around teaching and learning. So on Mondays, if you ever try to reach me, I'm always in either cabinet or S's cabinet, as you well know. So typically, we'll meet from about 1 to 3 on school support cabinet, and then we go, some of the school support people join the big cabinet, and we meet from about 3 to 5. And we deal with more operational, but we do have school people in that. And you wouldn't think that we would have a lengthy agenda, but every Monday there is so much to do that we need to coordinate and focus on. So now, what I would suggest, I'll just go over it briefly, but what I would suggest, Ms. Noble and I were having a conversation that depending on
I
your...
just figured out what SS cabinet is.
School support?
Yeah.
So on Monday, when I tell you I'm an SS cabinet, we were having a conversation about this, that I would like for you to read this and digest it, and then if you'd like to say, I'd like to have more in depth about what's happening in teaching and learning, or I'd like to know how facilities and operations is organized, we can certainly do that. Now, I don't know, did we do anything with color coding in terms of funding sources? So can you talk to that, Dr. Ryan? Oh, there it is, right there. There's a legend. Well, I'll be there. So operational and other grants. So many of our departments are, thank you, Dr. Ryan, are not, thank you for doing that, are not funded out of the operational budget. So if you look at Ms. Singh's, many are federal, or we've written grants that, let's say we got a pre-K grant. I would imagine, is Dr. Aswad, is she funded through pre-K? So if we write a grant and we get funded for it, you have to have somebody manage the program if they're big grants, right? So you see that most of her department is grant funded. And I've had people say to me, well, back when I ran this department, or back in 15 years ago, we only had 8 or 9 people in that whole department. Look at them now. Well, it's because there's a lot more specialty programs, and with that money comes a ton of accountability in terms of what we need to provide back reports to the public ed department or to the federal government or to a private grantor. Facilities and operation is almost entirely funded either through SB 9, HB 33, the GEO bond. We go to technology. A lot in technology is funded through the educational technology note. Sure.
So given what you just said in terms of other grants, including the legislative funding that you mentioned, what is in operational funds? Is that basically what comes through the SEG?
Operational is, yes, is the SEG. Yes, right? Yeah. Is the SEG, which is about $100 million. So even if the rest, like for example, business services is pretty much all operational, right? If you look at page, the next one, safety and security is operational. Community engagement. So like for example, I say when you have less people, we can write more about what everybody does. So if you can see some of these, you get a lot more detail. They just couldn't fit it all on those charts, but we can always add addendums. What people do, like what does the academic strategist do? Human resources, this is how they're currently organized. We need to put page numbers on this, though, if we can. And then data and analytics, and what happens in that department, or how is that different than assessment? So what I'd like to suggest is for you to really, go deep into it, and then either let the president know or let me know where you'd like to go deeper. If you'd like to focus on a department, we're happy to bring the staff for you to meet them. And but this was requested by our principals a while back, that they wanted to know who everybody was, and of course they wonder, like, well, how much money you put into this? Where did all these people come from? So this really helps explain, are they funded through grants or are they coming out of the budget? Stand for questions, Madam President.
Well, I'll just say thank you very much for this. As I opened this and realized I didn't have the time and bandwidth to take it all in, but there's a huge amount of information here, including the lovely legends that tell us where the funding is in different departments and with functions. So thank you very much, and to everybody who worked on this. It looks like a huge amount of work and a lot of detail, and I think is actually a really great key for the board as well as the community to really understand the structure and a lot of the functions of the public schools. And
it's on our website.
Okay, great. Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, Dr. Garcia, thank you very much for this, especially within the staff, especially with the photos. That'll be really helpful for me.
You bet. And I want to thank, if we would have had to have done this from scratch, we wouldn't be able to turn it around in a week. But as I said, was this asked of us about 2 years ago or 3 years ago to make it more detailed? 2 years ago. And Cabinet really put a lot of effort into this. So I thank them all for their hard work.
And as Dr. Garcia said, I'm thinking if we need any follow-up once we digest the large amount of information that's here, we can talk about that. And if we want to talk more about, departments' functions or funding, but this is a great primer as we start thinking about building a budget over the next few months. Thank you. So appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item B under presentations, program relocation to Capshaw site. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We have had, discussions about where we were going with the Capshaw site, and we've been working over the last, I would say, 7 months more in detail about what the needs are of the district and how we can utilize that site. I want to make sure that the public is aware that to rebuild a building like that would be, in the $25 to $30 million range. And it was decided not to remodel that site and DeVargas, but rather to build Milagro. Don't want anyone to think that we are looking at that kind of investment into Capshaw. We're looking at a fraction of what it would be to move some programming in there temporarily as we continue to work on our planning. So I just want to say that. It'll be repeated in the presentation, but I think it's one of those things that bears repeating. And so now I'll turn this over to Deputy Superintendent Christy Wagner, who will make the presentation.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Garcia. The presentation this evening is really about providing a short-term solution to look at some long-term options for some important and developing programs in Santa Fe Public Schools. So I work collaboratively with Gabe Romero, who's not here with me this evening, but also with Miss Linda Sink and Tom Ryan to really look at the needs for these academic programs. And our facility improvements, as you'll see in the presentation, that we're proposing are really quite minimal, so that we can spend our facility master planning year studying the best future for these programs. So we'll go ahead and let you know what we're talking about here. The goals of this relocation, again, are temporary. We've done this in the past. We've used closed or repurposed schools to temporarily house programs, or even we call it hotboxing in construction, but to put students from another school or program while we figure out or build out their permanent site. In this case, we have a lease that expires for the Academy Bridge Engage facility in July of this year. Those of you that don't know, those school programs are currently in a leased building over approximately a bit of a ways from the mall. I'm coming up short on my words because I'm trying to think of Hutton Broadcasting. There we go. You can see the towers from the school. We're also looking for temporary housing for all the programs housed in that lease. But we're looking for a place to house some special education programs for our high schoolers. We are looking at this as an opportunity to share staff, space, and programming. So while it is a little bit of a struggle sometimes to combine locations and house multiple people under one roof, there's a lot of opportunity for operational cost savings when we're looking at the leadership and the staff share in that building. We are coming up on our 2021 Facilities Master Planning Year. We just launched that contract, and we will have these programs in our view. We'll really study their program and facility needs to include them in our Facilities Master Plan, which is our roadmap for future improvements to the school district facilities. So as I mentioned on the next slide, the programs to be included are those programs in the leased location over by Hutton. ZIA program is a high school program. And we also have a problem of storage. That is not something unusual to school districts or any large entities, but we're about to lose our largest storage facility. It's on the south campus of Santa Fe High School in A building. That building will actually be very smartly renovated and rebuilt for the Eco Campus, and it houses a lot of our short-term storage for the district. We also have a fairly immediate need to move out of our BF Young gym storage. It's not currently adequate for all the program materials and the staff access required to get to those program materials. We're in the early stages of looking at the renovations needed for the former Capshaw facility. We really want to go in low end on these renovations. We're looking at things like minor demolition, remodeling, making sure that we have enough restrooms to accommodate the various programs, inspecting current systems, not replacing, not upgrading. Those are very pricey. We might have to do some separation of spaces depending on how the programs relate to one another. We need to update our signage, and then there'll be some tech equipment and perhaps some minor infrastructure needs. Right now we have $500,000 budgeted, but of that I know the current costs are coming in around $250,000, $260,000. So we hope to keep it well below the budgeted amount at final build out. Our proposed floor plan is subject to change, but this is based on our work with Ms. Sink and Dr. Ryan, as well as we'll be working with Mr. Chavez and the principal of Academy Engage Bridge to look at which spaces we can most easily adapt for their use. And really we're just looking at bringing in furniture, making sure they have adequate access to technology, and making sure that all of the finishes are clean and safe for the students. So this is just one example of a layout that might show the various programs living on this campus. That really concludes my presentation at this time. I will stand for questions. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is an urgent need with our lease ending in July 2020. We have some programs in existence that need a place to be while we study their future needs, and these other programs and storage needs match with them pretty naturally, and we feel that we can accommodate them with minimal cost.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from the board?
Madam President, when was this work completed, and when do those programs move in?
Board President, board members, Superintendent Garcia, we're pricing the work currently, trying to understand the scope to move and house everyone. We'll complete the work in the early springtime, latest into summer. We will have to move out of the leased property by July, the end of July. So we'll be positioned ready to move as soon as staff wraps up their instruction for the school year. And we assist with that, and that will be a part of the budgeted expense, moving the people and their things to the building. So we'll be ready to open in August of 2020.
Secretary Garcia.
Just thank you for the presentation. Is there any plans for the field? Jim?
Board President Noble, board members, Superintendent Garcia, we have been in some preliminary discussion with some city staff about their need for fields. It's one of the reasons we've been continuing to maintain the field. We don't have an immediate conclusion about what any joint use or partnership might look like. We're waiting on some answers. And we continue to entertain joint use or requests for facility use for the gymnasium. And there's a reason, another good reason that we want to continue to bring life to the building is so that it is occupied, that we are coming and going from the building every day, that we're using it for something purposeful while we plan for our futures. But we have opened that gym for facility use requests, and we'll continue to do so as long as it doesn't interfere with the regular program need, the regular program day, and keeping kids safe during the day.
Perfect. Thank you.
And thank you for opening that already for facility use requests. I know those come fast and furious. Any other questions, discussion on this item? Seems like a good plan. Thank you very much. Okay, we are, again, as a reminder, postponing item C on our agenda under presentations, restraint and seclusions. We'll hear that at another time. So we are now on item D, the school calendar for 2020 and 2021, that school year, the next school year. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. And I should have, let's see. The surveys. That's all right. I am missing a handout that I will share with you or email you. So let me just go over this calendar. We surveyed the staff regarding whether or not they would be interested in, this is all truancy, on whether or not they would be interested in working an additional 20 or 25 days. As you know, this has been quite a topic of conversation throughout the state. And in working with our union representative, our president rather, Grace Mayer, and we also had some meetings with our board president, with the legislature about, you know, reform funds, which might give us more flexibility, or applying for K-5 or K-8 plus. We decided that we needed to start with the workforce, that there was no need to survey parents if the workforce wasn't going to be there. And as you recall, last year we had a great deal of difficulty in getting folks to want to teach in the K-5 because they found out so late. Now, still this year, we probably won't know for sure what we're going to get funded for until March. But we surveyed the staff, and there's some schools that had percentages in the 40s or 50s. We had one school that had percentages in the 70s that are willing to teach K-5 plus or K-8 plus. I would say, with the exception of a couple of schools, I think we probably have enough workforce with the reform funds to be able to offer it to some degree in all of our schools. So we decided for K-5 plus, or K-8 plus, as you might want to call it, that we would make it voluntary for students and staff. We thought that was the best way to go. Hence, there was no real need to survey the staff. It will be run the way we've done it in the past, where people can pre-register, and if the funding is there, what we're going to do based on our board discussion at the retreat is to make sure that we advertise in a number of ways so that people know that it exists and that this is an opportunity. We decided that that program will run in July if we are funded. So if you see that blue there for July, that's when all of our summer programs really will take place. And people can try, you know, if they're not planning on participating in a program in June, they have the month of June to travel if they want to have their kids in school in July. This will help the city to be able to plan early, and other providers of when we'll have childcare or need childcare or recreational or enrichment programs will be in the month of June. The other advantage in working with the union on this, of starting it in July, is what might make it more attractive to teachers, is that because it's in one fiscal year, not crossing two, they will be able to realize any salary increases and then add those additional days to their salary. So that, I think, also makes it more attractive. So that's based on available funding. There is one other thing that is available, will be available based on funding, and that is extended learning program. And we're looking at adding 5 years to the calendar. 5 days, 5 years. Yeah. Everybody want to join up? Let's just sign up right now. 5 days. to the calendar. And that would begin on August the, PD for the teachers would start on August 4th, but the students would start on August 10th. And that, again, is dependent on funding. And we should know, I hope, by March so that we could let community know that school will start. I do want to mention something about extended learning, and I'm looking at Dr. Gonzalez and her other hat that she wears, working closely with the legislature. And that is that the statute on extended learning says you have to add 10 days to your existing calendar. We think that's patently unfair because there are some districts that are way under. We already had 5 days built in, and we are then penalized if we don't add another. That would make that our year would be 15, not 10 days longer. So we hope that with the reform dollars, there may be more flexibility, and we're going to add those 5 days based on funding. We are surveying staff just to see what that looks like, and if the workforce is there, and they, the majority. The union felt that probably the 5 days wouldn't be a deal breaker, and it also adds to their salary. Then survey parents, and then take it from there. So right now we are looking at that. That is pending funding. But let's just say we don't get any funding, or we have K-5 sporadically here and there. We're not going to have any district-wide K-5 programs, and I don't think we're going to have 100% at any school. So again, it's voluntary on both sides. So let's say no funding comes, kids will start on the 17th. If you look, that would be the first day of school for our kiddos. And then you look at the breaks. So we really heard what people said about needing more breaks throughout the year and shortening the winter break. So the winter break this year will be the 2 weeks beginning on the 21st of December, and kids would come back. Where's my January? On the 5th of January. We built in 3 days of break in October. So if you add that to the weekend, you can have like a 5-day break there. In November, and a day was added for, right before Thanksgiving, and we are closed on Election Day. We added a day, we have the 18th. We have always had that on January. I think that's President's Day or Martin Luther King Day. President's Day in February, the week off in March. Then what's new is 2 days off in April. Usually it's a long haul from spring break to the end of the year. So we added a couple of days in April. And the feedback we've been getting has been pretty positive about this calendar. And but it does have that contingency. I will be doing a video just explaining the calendar to the public and what we are doing and why that we did not survey, because there really wasn't a need to. We started with the workforce. I think that makes a lot of sense when I explain it to people, but we'll get that out on Facebook and on our website. And I also had a mini, you might say editorial board, but it's not really editorial board, a mini meeting with both the newspapers prior to the meeting to better explain this. And I'll share the survey results. I do have with you, though, a email that I sent to the staff today about the calendar and letting them know about the extra 5 days. You could just read that at your leisure, and I stand for questions.
I have some questions.
Secretary Garcia.
I totally appreciate the staff as to what the staff does for the district. It is very challenging to be an educator, and I appreciate what staff does for our community and our children. And just some of the and I appreciate working with the union as into what days off and additional days off we can give our educators, because they are they are overwhelmed and they do work very hard. Some of the questions I have in regards to some of the concerns that the community have, or in my district, and some of the individuals that had some concern is this year they had 3 weeks for Christmas, and in some of the areas where I'm going at, it's kind of hard for parents to actually take that additional week because they need to hire babysitters because some of the individuals in my district were, let's just say, different type of industries, and it was, I got questioned a lot as to how come there's another week? What's happening with another week? One of the other things that in my district that I got questioned about are people are like, why teacher-parent conferencing happened. They had a 3-week break, and then teacher-parent conferencing happened like the next following week for 2 more additional days off. So several individuals in my district have to get babysitters, right? And it cost them some money, and I didn't really look at it. But I said, this time when we look at our calendar, I'm going to look at that stuff because I definitely feel for them, and I see what their concerns are. See, some of the other things that...
If I may, just, I think it's all over the city. I heard the same things all over the community, and personally this week, and those are the 2 first things I looked at, was how much off at Christmas or for the winter holidays, and it's 2 weeks, not 3. And then it's this week that I got an email that a parent said, well, I just call it Hell Week, where you have 2 days of school. With Martin Luther King Day and then parent-teacher conferences on Thursday and Friday. But both of those things seem to be remedied on this calendar, fortunately.
They seem to be okay?
They are remedied. There are 2 weeks off at the end of December, and parent-teacher conferences come, you'll see, on the 11th and 12th of February, not the week of January 18th, where Martin Luther King Day is.
And then also some of the concerns that there's a parent out there that has a child in 4th grade, and then she have a child in, let's just say, 11th grade. And so I know we can't accommodate every single parent out there, and so the older child could actually stay home, but the younger child, they have to get a babysitter for that child or have one of the parents, grandparents, neighbors, or somebody watch that. So if we can also keep in mind the challenges that the community has out there in regards to, you know, finding a babysitter, or how many days off are they, when are they scheduled, because like I said, there's a lot of people in my district that don't work from 8 to 5, and they need to find a babysitter. So if we can just think of the concerns of the community, and definitely as well as the educators out there.
So, may I? Madam President, Secretary Garcia, members of the board, one of the big challenges is that our teachers, you know, when we see these days off or whatever, they work for what they're paid for. So they don't really, I mean, they work the 175 or 180 days. Their paychecks are then divided up over 26 or what is it, 26 pay periods, or no, 24, right? We pay twice a month. So they're not getting paid necessarily for those vacation days. They only get paid for the days they work. If we have to have parent-teacher conferences, so if they're going to be in the evening, then we have to budget, and it would have to be negotiated, changing their conditions in terms of employment, whether they would be available at night to do parent conferences. So that is the major challenge of having them, and I recognize the challenges for many working families. And you know, it's something that we can certainly tackle, and as we do negotiations this year to talk about that, and I'd be happy to talk to the union about it, but it would be something that would have to be negotiated if we were going to do it in the evening, and we'd also have to pay.
Then also really quick on why the 3 days on October 12th, 13th, and 14th?
Because the staff needs those breaks because they start burning out. That's what we heard from the staff, is that they need a break in there. We get a lot of burnout. It's you know, we're starting early, so after about 2.5 months, they need that time.
And then also why the extra day on the 25th
of what
November
day, month?
November.
Again, so we have to, you know, if we don't put those breaks in there, then school will either start a day earlier or later, and will end earlier. And so we have X amount of days to work in. And what we heard from our staff is that they need those breaks. So that's why we try to build those in. and it's a zero-sum game. You know, if we take off break days, then we either start school later or we start school earlier. I mean, it's just 6 of one and half dozen of the other, right? You might have to pay some extra babysitting days at the end of the year, or the beginning of the year, which might be easier, but I can tell you, if we compress the calendar and don't give teachers and staff these breaks, we see far more discipline issues, we see more burnout. It's really hard for the staff. They really do need those breaks.
Madam President?
Yes, Dr.
Secretary.
Gonzalez.
Secretary. Dr. Garcia, you're secretary. I'm all confused here with you were secretary at one time. I think the kids need it too. It's not just the staff that need the breaks during the year.
Just needed to bring it up because I understand we have three, 4 different things happening here, and we can't accommodate the entire community, but it's just, those are just concerns that the community has.
It's legitimate.
Right.
But you know, one thing we can do, I'm sorry, didn't go through you, Madam President, Secretary Garcia, is to work with the county and the city on, you know, having childcare during those time frames, to see if we can get more sliding scale or free support to those families. Maybe we can work towards that to see how we can help our families in that way.
Madam President, Dr. Garcia, can you ever have babysitters at the school for?
That creates a whole nother set of regulatory concerns and issues. It is something that we could do, we could budget, but to be able to legitimately provide that, it requires a different kind of licensing. So it's better to have another provider come in and do it, like Boys and Girls Club, or, you know, there's any number of groups that provide support.
And just also really quick, we just need to educate the community a little bit more as into, here's a calendar, you know, and understand some individuals don't do Facebook or social media. And so if we can somehow get to the individuals out there, our parents out there that do not do social media or do not do Facebook or Snapchat, whatever, all that stuff is going around these days. Another example that individuals, parents don't realize is when it snowed the other day. Got so many calls, how come we're not closing the schools? Why aren't you guys closing the schools? And I explained to them, because there's several things happening there. We need bus drivers. You send a child home and there's no one there to watch the child. So after you actually explain it to them as to why we don't close schools, in which they were welcome to come and pick up their child, then they understand. And so it's just educating them as into, here's the new calendar, and you know how we can do that a little bit more. We're doing an excellent job at that, but just for some of the individuals in my district.
Thank you for pointing that out to Mr. Garcia, that we'll also ask staff, principals, to make sure these go home in kids' backpacks for those parents that may not check the website, or maybe we can do a robocall to talk to your child to make sure that you get this on Friday. You know, we'll just do multiple efforts. We also get on radio, so like when we're doing Que Suave or some of the other radio stations, we'll really look at multiple ways of communicating.
And that's so critical. And when we get there, I mean, to sort of tie it all together, to communicate the options, and particularly if we can work with the city and the county and figure out ways to have more either free or sliding scale, certainly affordable, because there are programs, and there are often scholarships available for programs on the off days, but it's tough. And I would say, you know, this is something we've got to push on, which is more collaboration and coordination with private sector partners, with our public sector partners, the city and the county, around our calendar, as well as after school programs, because it's just an incredible challenge for working parents everywhere in this community. And what you say, Dr. Garcia, I appreciate so much about the putting things in backpacks. You know, sending things home with kids is probably one of our most powerful ways to communicate. So if we can even think about that as a resource just on the options around the calendar, you know, what some of the possibilities are, because everybody is struggling this week, for example, and it's just. And if you are on social media, you at least can find camaraderie in the struggle, but that often doesn't necessarily help you find childcare. So it's something that I hope as a board we can keep pushing on, and not just for the days off school, but also for after-school programs, because 3 o'clock is not when many work days end. I don't know, well, actually I do know one person who ends her work day at 3 o'clock, but most of us actually have to work later than that.
She probably started at 6 in the morning.
But yeah, no, just because Sarah gets to get up very early and work hard and, make it all work. But she's actually kind of an exceptional person. Okay, anything else on the calendar? I just want to say I think, you've done a good approach. We'll see how it works for other districts who have approached it differently. It looked like it got somewhat messy in a couple other districts recently, and I know you've been working closely with our teachers union, and I know that that's been appreciated, and working hard to listen to the staff, because burnout is an issue, and we need to take care of our teachers. We need to retain them, and the calendar matters to everybody. Breaks for staff, and I totally agree with Dr. Gonzalez with kids as well.
Madam President, on that point, I forgot to share something with you, but there's 2 fundamental things we have to have. We have to have teachers in the classroom. I mean, just have to have teachers, right? And we're working on recruitment and retention. That's number 1. Second thing, the kids have to come to school. And if the kids aren't in school, we can't teach them. And our truancy rate with excused absences is up between 25 and 27%. Be they sick, or parents take them on trips, or they just ditch, right? Doesn't matter. They're not there for us to teach. So I forgot to share with you, if you are interested in attending, on Thursday is the truancy leadership meeting. I've been meeting with, and here's a little handout. There's the agenda, just FYI. But you'll see, I think it's your 3rd page. It's called ART, Attendance Reengagement Team. That's what they named it, or the Reengagement Council. But if you go to that back page, you can see that we're working with CYFD, City of Santa Fe County, the school district, the sheriff's office, the police department, mental health, the DA's office, the public defenders, and the 2 magistrate court judges. And also Judge Marlowe, which is missing on this chart. But we are collaborating on a big city, county-wide effort to coordinate our efforts around getting kids to come to school. And so just wanted you to be aware of it. So there's many things happening that people don't know, that we are collaborating with all of these entities, and we intend to have, at some point I'll let you know when we'll go public with what we have been doing, but we've been working on this all year. It's on there, it's on the first page. It's this Thursday. So obviously, it's not a board meeting, so we don't have to notice it. But if you are attending, we just have to be cautious. If we get a quorum, just in terms of how you respond, you're there as an individual, not as a member of the board.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ready to move on to advanced planning? Okay, so on advanced planning, we need to, in essence, ask that study sessions are moved to Thursdays, which is not reflected in these dates.
Correct.
So, for example, the next one will be February 13th. And then the one beyond that will be February 27th. And the time that we agreed at our retreat would be 4 to 6 p.m. So that's okay with everybody. And any discussion on that? I don't think we take action on that.
No, it's just you typically just
Say it out loud.
Right, and we get it in the minutes. However, I do want to ask you, I know we're starting up the session, if whether or not I don't feel like we need to have it right on finance yet on the what day did you say, the 13th?
The 13th, I believe.
So
we
we
also
don't-
agreed
we
that
don't
our
have
bias
any-
was to not have
that one, so
that
we
day.
won't have that one.
Okay.
Okay?
And then we will have the Finance Subcommittee, which is a committee of the whole, on February 27th.
Correct.
Okay.
And at that time, if we can build into it what you wanted in your agenda, as we go over some general things, to be giving us ideas of board priorities, to give us a sense, and then at some point you all will act on it, but just to hear from you what you're thinking would be helpful.
Okay, great. So that will be our next study session, will be on February 27th, starting at 4 p.m. And otherwise, we will be back here on February 4th, tentatively for executive session at 4:30, and otherwise for a regular meeting at 5:30. Anything else on advanced planning? And Dr. Garcia, will you or somebody make the connection, at least for Dr. Gonzalez and the PI board?
Absolutely. We'll do that for all the committees and connect you, get you on the right listservs, and I will let them know. I'll be attending the meeting, that you'll be the rep, give them your contact info, and we'll make sure you know where they meet. Okay?
All right, anything else? In that case, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.